So we have been asked to do a video on the drive serve. Some of the technical aspects, but I think there's also a good discussion point here, Dean, on why it's sort of been frowned upon in the past, but actually maybe seen a bit more nowadays.
I think the main reason it's frowned upon is that the return of serve don't necessarily like it because it catches them by surprise. And there's always a little bit of, is that legal?
Yeah.
And I think the reason it's come into the game a lot more now is down to the new service rules, where now they are allowed to have the racket head above the handle. So almost, even though some people are having to serve low in the way of height, it feels like you might be able to kind of get away with the flat serve, the drive serve a little bit more.
Now, we're not going to go through all the different serving setups and stances. We actually have a video on that, so make sure you go check that out first. But Dean, what are we sort of doing slightly differently for this drive serve over maybe a normal serve?
I think if we're looking at a low serve, particularly, we talk a lot about having this fluid, controlled movement, a very controlled shot that we want to land close to the front of the court. With this serve, it's very much a high-paced shot. So almost feeling like rather than it being a controlled motion, it's almost very much a tap, a flick of the wrist to feel like we're gaining that pace. Anytime in badminton when we're adding pace, we generally try and feel like we're squeezing the grip and adding the wrist of power. And that's very much the same with this type of serve.
So when it comes to the amount of power, it's very similar to a flick serve. Obviously we want to keep this flatter, Dean. How do we go about doing that?
So it's very much to do with the contact point as I make contact with the shuttle. So if we look at the flick serve, which is very much the one where we're trying to feel like I'm getting over the top of my opponent, as I'm coming through, I would want the angle of the racket to start pointing in a slightly upwards direction. Now, whereas the drive serve, I want that shuttle to go past my opponent, so it feels like it's going nice and quick through them. So what I have to do with my contact point now is as I'm coming through, I almost feel like I'm leading a bit more with the grip and with my hand to keep the angle of the racket feel like it's pointing a lot flatter.
Now also, like maybe a flick serve, we don't want to be overusing this. Timing is essential to get the most effectiveness out of this serve. When do we want to be using it, Dean?
I mean, it could be an example where maybe the returner is very good at returning low serves, and occasionally we just want to kind of throw them off a little bit, their routine, or maybe get them away from knowing it's coming, so we throw the drive serve in. The other aspect you could use it in is if a match is very close. And maybe we haven't used it yet throughout the whole game, and it comes as a bit of a surprise element to the person returning.
And also direction is really important when it comes to this drive serve. So what I'd recommend if you're about to use it, have a look at your opponent and how they're standing. And we want to aim away from their racket. So it's forcing them to have to try and move this racket. That's going to take time, and time is not something you have when someone's drive serving at you. So we hope you found this drive serve tutorial useful. What I'd recommend, practice it, add it to your games, but make sure you're still doing it within the service rules.
And as always, if you like this content, please hit the like and subscribe button and head over to Instagram and give us a follow.